Hey friends, consumer attorney Rob Nahum here. In addition to my consumer practice, I also do a good bit of work with small businesses with regard to debt and credit issues. I wanted to talk a little bit today about an issue, a pattern that's developing in New York State courts affecting small businesses. We hear a lot of talk these days about appreciation for small businesses, given the state of the economy these days, and our reliance on small businesses. It really is important that we value these small businesses, and that's one of the reasons why I represent small businesses. But there's an industry out there that, instead of supporting small businesses, is preying on them and is taking advantage of them, and that is the merchant cash advance industry. Small businesses under tremendous pressure right now with the downturn in the economy and the coronavirus, right? Small businesses are desperate to keep their businesses afloat, and so they're searching out ways to raise capital. Traditional avenues for capital, like banks and credit unions, are basically unavailable. Small businesses just can't get loans approved through small businesses, so they're going to these merchant cash advance companies. Now, what is a merchant cash advance? Well, basically, it's a way to lend money to a small business and get around the usury laws. We have laws in every state that prevent lenders from charging exorbitant rates of interest. Here in New York, the rate of usury is 16%. These merchant cash advance companies are charging interest rates that far exceed the rates of usury. So how do they get around it? Well, what they do is they structure the deal in a way where they're not lending you money. Instead, they're buying your future receivables, right? They're not lending you money, they're buying your future account receivables. How do they get paid back? Well, what they do is you give them permission every day to dip into your bank account and pull out a given amount of money to pay back that purchase of future accounts receivable. Every day, they're going in there and drawing on their money, sometimes leaving you with nothing left, right? It's a terribly insidious practice, and it's preying on desperate small business owners. Now, the reason merchant cash advance agreements have become a problem for us here in New York is because, for some reason, all the merchant cash advance lenders are here in New York. And what they've done is they've structured their transactions with a choice of law and venue provision that says if there's going to be a dispute in court, it has to be here in New York. So if you're a small business owner in California or in Ohio or Wisconsin, you have to come here to New York to litigate the claims in the merchant cash advance agreement. It's a terribly abusive practice, and it is intended to make it hard for you to come and defend the lawsuit. And this way, they don't have to prove their damages in court. Now, historically, one of the really insidious things that MCAs were doing was when you signed your merchant cash advance agreement, you also signed a document called a confession of judgment. Now, a confession of judgment basically allows them to get a court judgment against you without having to prove their case, without having to prove that you defaulted, without having to prove how much money is owed, because you've already confessed that you owe them an amount of money and that you authorized them to enter judgment against you. Now, back in the summer of 2019, the New York State Legislature realized how abusive this practice was, using confessions of judgment to get out-of-state debtors. You could be a dentist in California, or you could be a plumber in Wisconsin. And if you got a merchant cash advance agreement, that agreement says that if there's gonna be a lawsuit or if they're gonna seek remedies because of default, they could do it here in New York. You have nothing to do with New York, but they're bringing you here to New York to use our courts to collect their contracts. So the state legislature just concluded that this was an abusive practice, and so they banned the use of confessions of judgment. Now, anyone who had a confession of judgment entered against them before August 30th of 2019, that confession of judgment is still good, and they can still enforce it against you, and it's accruing interest at 9%. So even though that practice is outlawed now, there is an old inventory of these judgments in favor of these merchant cash advance companies that they're still collecting on. Now, if you have a merchant cash advance agreement now, instead of using a confession of judgment, they have to sue you to recover it. But like I say, if you're a dentist in California or you're a plumber in Wisconsin, they're going to sue you in New York. You either have to travel to New York to defend yourself or hire a lawyer here to represent you, or risk default. You're already in distress. You already have no money, or you would be going to a merchant cash advance company, and now you have to come to New York to defend a lawsuit. It's really abusive. If you have a merchant cash advance agreement and a judgment entered against you, there really are very few defenses to it. The practice itself is legal. Merchant cash advance businesses are a legal entity, at least for the time being. But what happens is it's the execution of the merchant cash advance agreement where the illegality comes in. So, for example, you can have a broker who acts as a go-between between you and the merchant cash advance lender, who makes all kinds of misrepresentations to you about how it's going to work. That's called fraudulent inducement. And if your merchant cash advance agreement was the product of a fraudulent inducement, that may be a defense against the merchant cash advance agreement. So, small business owners, please, I know how desperate you are, but please think twice before borrowing money through a merchant cash advance agreement. They're terribly abusive. The contracts are written one-sided, not in your favor, and if things go wrong and you lose the ability to pay back that merchant cash advance agreement, they can wreck not only your business, they can wreck your life. You will sign a personal guarantee of your corporate debt. So they're going to come after you individually. Your home is at jeopardy, your assets are at jeopardy. It's a really bad deal. Please be aware of it and try and stay away from them. Take care of each other. Love and light.